So this story came out about 2 weeks ago. The Goon Squad, a white supremacist team of cops from Mississippi that will routinely harass, kill, torture innocent people, finally were arrested after torturing two black men, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, in January 2023. Just recently, these cops were sentenced to a combined 132 years, I believe, which marks the longest sentences for police brutality, the longest cases individually and combined in the history of the United States. Now, I'm not making this video to say, you see, the justice system does work. I'm highlighting this story because it's important to see what's possible so that people can know that they're not in a completely hopeless situation. This is really good to see. Now, I think the longest sentence individually was for one of the cops who got 40 years. And for anybody looking at this and thinking, well, this seems extreme considering the fact that they didn't kill anybody, you got to keep in mind they had already been doing this. These are not the first people they did this like kind of torture to. They were terrorizing the community. And now they've finally been brought to justice. And much respect to Malik Shabazz, the lawyer representing the victims. He runs an organization called Black Lawyers for Justice. And it's just so important to bring these kind of cases to light for the sake of the victims of this case, but also all of the other people that these cops harmed and all the lives they've impacted. People, this is important work. And that's what I'll be saying. If publicity wasn't brought to this case, probably nothing would have came of it. But the pressure in bringing this into the national spotlight, to the point that even the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland spoke on this case. And whenever there are these cases of disappearances down south, and these kind of things don't just happen in the South. These things happen everywhere throughout the United States. The Goon Squads aren't the only white supremacist cops doing shit like this. There are a lot of Goon Squads out there. There's cases all the time of black people being lynched or coming up missing and police covering it up. These cases need to get the same amount of attention until the people who committed these crimes get brought to justice, just like these Goon Squad cops did. There's hundreds of families out there who's had a loved one suffer police brutality or came up missing under mysterious circumstances only to be covered up by the local police. This is what needs to happen every single time. The perpetrators need to be arrested, brought to court, tried, and convicted, and given lengthy sentences and be made an example out of. If you have a family member that something like this happened to, don't give up. Keep trying to give your case more and more publicity until you get justice. Call up civil rights lawyers and tell them what's going on. We need to get justice for everybody that this kind of stuff is happening to. Not saying that it's always going to be successful, that justice always will prevail, but at least we're living in a day and time where it's definitely possible. Thanks to people during the civil rights era who fought and died for this justice. And not just that, we also need to put pressure on attorney generals of every state, especially the states where we see these kinds of things happening the most in. Put pressure on them to go after corrupt police departments. And you might think, oh, these attorney generals are racist themselves. That might be true, but they also don't want the bad publicity. They also don't want to be in the news for being an attorney general that lets their police departments just run amok and target innocent people and commit these kinds of acts of terror. And we have to fight to get lawmakers to put in place mechanisms to prevent these kinds of cops from entering the force, which is not really that hard to weed out. Trust me, a lot of people that make it seem really difficult, they're just making excuses because they don't want to do it. They have a policy where they're supposed to do the same thing for the military. Now, I don't know if it's enforced, There needs to be a program for police departments to do the same exact thing. This needs to become a domino effect. This kind of stuff needs to be repeated over and over in each state. I think Letitia James, I believe, the New York Attorney General, if I'm not mistaken, I think she sued the NYPD for police brutality. The California State General definitely needs to do a lot of work cracking down on gangs within the LAPD. Cause that shit is crazy. And I'm sure that's not the only police department with gangs in it, but this LA is probably the one with the most egregious example and the most gangs. As far as these cops go, these cowards, man, they had to get a badge to have the nuts to basically bully innocent people going about their day. It's so ironic that these white supremacists view themselves as being superior when their thinking is actually very animalistic and primal. These cowards needed a badge, the feeling of protection from the government, and I guess a few other guys to be able to do shit like this, you know? I really hope these guys, they put them in general population in a prison where it's a majority black inmates. If I hear of anything like this happening, I will make an update video on it later in the future. But until then, I hope these Goon Squad pigs have the roughest time of their lives in prison and regret the evil that they've done for every single day for the rest of their miserable, pathetic lives.